Welcome into a new edition of Capitol Happenings, our report from the State House. I'm Rob Kendall. Thanks for joining us. And at this time, we say hello to our friend, Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. Senator Merritt.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
So session has started. It's always like a back-to-school sort of thing, right?
It certainly is. And we had our press conference this week, we being the Senate Republican Caucus, and outlined some of the issues that we want to accomplish this year. And I think we're going to have a very good session.
Now, it's sort of like competing agendas. Not competing agendas, but you have something you want to do. The House has something they want to do. Are you guys surprised when they come out, or do they give you a heads up on what's going to happen?
Oh, both sides. We tend to try to work together on issues, and also the governor has his agenda. So there are three agendas that sometimes compete on issue by issue, but we have knowledge of what they're going to propose, and they know ours.
Now, new Governor Eric Holcomb, you were there for his inauguration. What was that like?
It's fantastic. I thought the governor's speech was poignant, and I thought it was gracious, and he's ready to go. I'm really looking forward to working with Eric.
Again, the show's Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall, along with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. We're going to get to one of the big issues that is of your interest, which is, of course, the drug addiction issue. But the issue on everybody's mind right now, because it gets all the media attention, is the infrastructure funding. You guys came out with something. It's much different than what the House has. Where do we go from here?
Well, we'll continue to work on it. There'll be ample opportunity for the public to come in and speak on issues, and we have heard from all corners of Indiana that our roads are in need of maintenance and service. Our bridges are needed to be replaced or fixed, and we hear that clarion call. And so we are reacting to that, and as well as, I think we need to give credit where credit's due. With the Mitch Daniels administration, we have gone to great lengths to making sure that we have new highways, we have new bridges, and we have worked hard in the last 10, 15 years on infrastructure. It's
fascinating because obviously this is getting a lot of the press right now because it will affect every single Hoosier. Do you guys sit down, House and Senate, together at some point, or how do the negotiations work? Because last year we saw you had a much different vision in the Senate, which didn't involve tax increases. That was ultimately what mostly moved forward. Mm-hmm. How does this thing play out, and how quickly does it play out?
Well, this will be a session-long situation and conversation. What will happen is the bill is introduced in the House, and it'll go through a complete vetting over in the House, and Representative Soliday, who's chairman of the Transportation Committee, will lead that effort. And it'll probably go to the Ways and Means Committee because it's a budget item. And once and if it passes, you never want to assume anything in the State House. Once and if it passes the House of Representatives, then we'll have our chance at it. And Senator Kreider is our chairman of our Transportation Committee, and then it'll be up to him to take a look at it and see what is right and what may be wrong, but what is right with the bill. And our finance committees our finance committee will take a look at it as well, and then it just continues. And once it passes the Senate, should it do so, we will sit down and chat with our partners over in the House of Representatives to talk about it.
One of the things we do on this show is to get people a little behind the scenes, maybe things they don't always see. Do you hear the noise on something like a roads funding bill? Like, do you hear the advocacy groups already, or do you just kind of walk through the State House with your head down, going to try to do what's best and right, and at the end of the day, we'll start listening once the meat and potatoes get in front of us?
Well, you certainly hear about what's going on in the media, and
it's good to know I'm heard.
Yes, and we do hear what the conversation is outside the State House and inside the State House. I tend to tend my own garden with the issues that I'm working on, and if something isn't in front of me right now, it's saved for later. But obviously we pay attention to it because someone may stop me at Walmart over the weekend and want to talk about it.
Again, our guest is Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt, currently talking a little bit about the infrastructure funding bill. Your leadership, and obviously people look to you. What is your advice to new senators on hot-button topics like this? How do you advise them to deal with this? Because you've got a lot of young fresh faces, I guess we'll say, even if they're not necessarily
Yep.
young faces, but they're new to this process. How do you
Right.
advise them to deal with these hot-button issues?
Well, Republican and Democrat, if you will.
Right.
We have many new people in the Senate. Senator Banks, now Congressman Banks,
Yeah.
is a good example. Senator Zay is very, very fresh. What I try to tell folks when asked is that do not commit to anything. Listen and listen and listen some more. And things are going to change in the next 6 weeks to 10 weeks. And there's no reason to provide an opinion on an issue that more than likely will change. And so what I do is I try to suggest to people who ask that change is the agent around here, and nothing is in stone until April.
So do guys like me, or we jumping the gun when I get out and get a little animated when the House thing comes out? Because it's concerning to me when I see a body, one half of sort of how this thing is made up, come out with a proposal. So do everybody just wait, calm down?
No, I don't think anybody calms down. I think everybody opine on what the House has suggested, and then we move on from here. That's what this is all about. We're a Republican, and everybody ought to be able to place their opinion out into the public domain, either on social media or come in the State House and talk about it and contact your representative. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to get excited about an issue, because how are we going to not know?
Regardless of what the issue is, do letters, emails, the phone calls to you, do they make a difference? Do they matter?
Yes, they do. In fact, petitions do not. When I get a piece of mail with lots of signatures on it underneath a message, if you will,
Sure.
That shows me that somebody really hasn't taken the time to develop their own opinion and has signed their name to somebody else's opinion. When I get a letter from an individual in their own words, it means a great deal.
Yeah, so the form email doesn't do it for you either.
Not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, we send a form email back. Yeah. But if someone is willing to give me a call and suggest something, I'm more apt to respond to that than some generic message.
Now, I do want to point out before we get to something pretty serious, you're very you're always nicely dressed, but I like this tie. Now, do you pick out your own stuff? Or
Yeah. I enjoy wearing different ties because our uniforms are just so boring.
Yeah.
You do well the suits, and you have to dress them up a little bit. But yeah, I try to separate myself out with nice ties.
Again, our guest is Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. Program is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall. Let's turn to something. You were pictured with our new governor, Eric Holcomb, the other day, talking about dealing with drug epidemics across the state of Indiana. You're pretty impressed with Holcomb's response.
I really am, and Eric understands. The governor understands that. First of all, this is a nation scourge, and we're probably in the top 5. Indiana's probably in the top 5 of being harmed by it. And not a day went by in the 106 days as a candidate for the office of governor, and before that, U.S. senator, countless days, that he was not reminded by someone that we have an epidemic in the state. And this scourge has to be taken care of. And he has signed on as the leader of what I call #Kill Heroin in 5 years.
This is a huge issue for you.
It is a huge issue. And because the reason why it's a huge issue is because it's a huge issue for our state. And last summer I felt like I wanted to step out and be the leader on it. And #Kill Heroin in 5 is something that I feel very, very strongly about, and so does the governor.
Now, one of the things the governor has done, for lack of a better term, we'll call him this, even though it may not be the technical term, is appointing a drug czar, right?
Correct.
What does this person do?
Well, I wrote a piece of legislation last year and created what we call it's got a long alphabetical name, but it's a drug commission.
Yeah.
And what it does is establishes all the leaders in state government, from the attorney general to the governor to the Department of Education superintendent, and on and on and on, who might or do have a direct impact. What we're trying to do is remove the silos. And what this drug czar will do is work with that commission to affect change. But we can't wait for that drug commission to work in 2017. So I have 19 bills that surround go through, handle the drug scourge. And it's just a start. It's the first installment of 5. And I feel really good that we're going to get good results and get a good assessment where we are with the epidemic.
Now, just a reminder, if you're watching us, don't forget we're also on SoundCloud and iTunes. You can download the show right to your smartphone or tablet. Listen anytime you want. Don't want to get in trouble at work if you're not allowed to have that video feed up. You can sit there and listen to us. All you got to do, we're under the Central Indiana Today feed, which is my show. Just search Central Indiana Today. You'll see the show labeled right there. It's totally free to do this. And, of course, the premise of the show is to inform people of what's going on in the State House. Now, getting back to the drug issue, is one of the problems, hey, for a while it was say no to drugs, that was marijuana, and that's a very specific drug, and here's how you want to deal with it, whether that's right or wrong, that there's an approach. Right now you got like 3 or 4 drug issues. You've got heroin, you've got opioids, you've got the HIV epidemic in certain counties. Yeah, you're trying to hit so many moving targets, am I right?
Right. And the reason why we call it #KillHeroin in 5 is that heroin's kind of a generic term. But it is opioid-based, and which is heroin. And when you see 50 overdoses on August 27th in Cincinnati, and
that's close.
Yes, and next day is 12 in southern Indiana, southeast Indiana, right in that area of Cincinnati, we have a problem. And if you just look at the numbers of the saves by Narcan in just Marion County alone, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Obviously, we've got a problem.
One of the issues with drugs, and this has been a conversation that's gone on for a very long time, is if people want to harm themselves, how are you going to stop them? What are some of these new approaches? You've talked about the multiple bills that you have that the legislature is looking at to try to get people to help themselves.
Right. And, sometimes it's mistaken. Sometimes people make errors. I'm suggesting a piece of legislation that if Schedule II, meaning the opioid drugs, are dispensed instead of the bottles that you get into blister packs that you can break open.
Right.
That will allow people to be able to count correctly, so they don't take too much, and their doctor knows what they have taken. And it's just another reminder that opioids are good, are quality for your pain threshold, but as well as you can't take too many. That's one issue, and along with we have a bill that is the Governor Holcomb's bill that says if you're a first-time pain medicine user, you use it for 7 days to start off with, and not any longer, and then the doctor can reassess. And it's really important with kids in this regard in opioids. And so those are just 2. We have pilot projects that we're proposing for pregnant addicts and women. For a residential living center for individuals who get in trouble in the law in Allen County. And so we are all over the mark. We are working on different aspects. As I said, in golf they say you tee for show and you putt for dough.
Right.
These are a lot of putts and things that I think mean a lot, but you wouldn't think that it's so pervasive. But this is a pervasive problem. And the only way we're going to be able to do is chip away at it because it's going to cost a lot of money. We do have to spend money to get out of this and to save our society. But I can't speak highly enough that we have a comprehensive plan to start year 1 of 5 to kill heroin.
Another behind-the-scenes question, getting away a little bit from the drug epidemic for a moment. Obviously, Holcomb comes in. He's got all new people. I'm seeing these posts on social media about the Pence people saying farewell, thanks for the time. Is that hard for you as a senator? Because you probably get used to working with certain people over 4 years with the governor saying, hey, if I need this, I'm going to call this person. If I need this, I'm going to call that person. Mm-hmm. What's the learning curve like to find out who these new people are and how to work together?
Well, it is difficult because the administration just started the other day. And there have been some folks that have been held over. Many members of the cabinet have been held over, but there are also new people. And for people, for cabinet members, maybe they don't have a legislative liaison yet, or they didn't hold one over, and the spot's just open, and that makes it very difficult to get an answer for a constituent. And it's no one's fault. It's just a time of patience, and something that we need to continue to work on. But on the other side of the coin, there is a freshness. And I'm very excited about this administration. They're very committed to solving many, many problems in the next 4 years, and as well as making Indiana get to the next level, as they say.
Making Indiana great again.
Yes, exactly.
Our guest is Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. The program is Capitol Happenings. I'm Rob Kendall. Thanks for being with us. Another issue that's big for you that I noticed that has popped up in the news is dealing with adults and educators that send explicit photos to children or violate the public trust. Tell us about this. You were very vocal on a recent sentencing. Tell us a little bit about what the plan is to address this.
Well, vocal is exactly right. I was downright ticked.
Yeah.
And
it's rare you get ticked.
Yeah.
The other day I said, Merritt, man, he's really fired up.
I was fired up because we had a situation where an individual's been convicted of a sex offense, in my estimation, and because of just a little trick in the law, that individual was sentenced to 6 years of home detention and doesn't have to register as a sex offender. And I believe she is a sex offender. I will have Senate Bill 200 that fills that void, that loophole, so that if you do send explicit pictures of yourself and you're a teacher and you send it to a pupil or a child, that is a sex offense. And we had to weave through sexting and a lot of different issues, but I believe that we've got amendment to the law in the way of Senate Bill 200 that makes sure that if the IPS counselor who was sentenced to 6 years of home detention but doesn't have to put themselves on the sex offense registry list, if that happens again, which we hope and pray it doesn't, that individual will be on the sex offense registry list.
It was interesting to see that come down. There's a lot of that on the local prosecutor saying, how does a local prosecutor cut that sort of deal?
Well, I think we were all I know I was enraged by it, and it was a deal cut. Obviously, I wasn't in the room, but for goodness sakes, weekends in jail. Some sort of punitive nature, because I want the next teacher who actually considers doing that to consider that they may go to jail. Right now they think, oh, I'll just get home detention. There's no determinant to that, and I want people to understand that this is wrong in our society, and there are some real penalties to it.
Seems you have some broad support for this.
Yes, and we'll pass legislation this year with Senate Bill 200 that makes sure that we don't have that again. On the legislation that we talked about this year is regarding background checks and making sure that not only new hires have to pass background checks, but over a 5-year period, school corporations have to have checked all of their employees. And 20% a year is what we're aiming towards. And I really believe this is important. We need to know who is working in our schools. It's not just teachers, it's school employees. And we will pass legislation this year that all school employees have to pass extensive background checks.
One of the major things that the House, the Senate, the legislature does in a budget session is fund education. There's a new superintendent of education, Jennifer McCormick. Give us a little a couple high-level thoughts on some of the things that she's talked about, where you think education is going to go over the next couple of years in Indiana, because there's going to be some big changes.
Exactly. And, I believe she's going to be so transparent, and she is going to work very hard on that State Board of Education. And I'm very excited. Dr. McCormick, Jennifer McCormick, is one bright bulb. I mean, she is a terrific individual, smart, and I'm really looking forward to working with her, because she is now a former superintendent, and that's who we want as the icon, if you will, as the leader of education in Indiana that has actually walked the walk.
Governor Holcomb has also said he will move to make the superintendent a appointed position.
Right.
Assume that needs the approval of the legislature. It does. There's no assuming to it. Mm-hmm. How do you think the legislature feels about moving that position?
Well, there are two sides to that coin. One is that this is 51% or more of our budget, of our $32 billion budget, and it's something that we need to pay very much attention to, that we need the public comment. And so I can see why someone would still want that person to be elected. But on the other side of the coin, I do believe that taking politics out of schools is important. And having that person as an appointed person in the office of the governor as a cabinet member makes a lot of sense. And so I can see why some of our members would want an individual elected from the Hoosiers of the state of Indiana as something, as an iconic figure for education, and to be able to voice and have an independent voice, along with taking the politics out and just being a cabinet member. So I favor the idea of it being appointed.
Speaking of new people, there is a new Indiana State Auditor that has been appointed.
Yes.
Tara Klutz, from, you mentioned Allen County earlier. She's from up there. She won't remember this, but I met her several years ago when I worked in the state auditor's office. She's a great pick, in my opinion, but curious to get your thoughts.
Oh, impressive individual, and probably the most, if you will, decorated, most educated individual we've had in that office, and I'm very, very impressed. I've never met her, but her address to the inaugural throng that was there was impressive, and I'm looking forward to working with her.
That a lot of people don't realize, but this Indiana State Auditor's office, you could argue, is the most important elected office in the state of Indiana. Maybe next to the governor, but maybe not, because they control dispersing the bills for the state of Indiana.
Yeah, and we pride ourselves on having a balanced budget, and that we pay our bills, unlike the state to the west of us. And so, yes, she plays an enormous role in making government run.
A couple minutes we've got left here on the program. Again, the program is Capitol Happenings with Indiana State Senator Jim Merritt. I'm Rob Kendall. The roads bill, just circling back, we've kind of hit on the two big topics right now, which are the roads bill as well as this drug epidemic. What are a couple of the other things that are going to kind of catch people's eye here over the next couple of weeks?
Well, not to make fun of catching eye, but I don't know if you noticed, but on 465 this morning there was an enormous chuck hole that NDOT, after being told that 3 or 4 cars were damaged by it, that same morning NDOT was out there this morning fixing it, maintaining it, and there are going to be a lot of issues that are going to be discussed, and there always is casino type of issues talked about. There'll be discussion about medical marijuana. And it will be a very interesting session with issues that you wouldn't, be prepared to talk about, because with all the work I've done on opioids and drug abuse and drug addiction itself, it's going to be interesting to figure out if there is a positive to CBD oil to be used for those that have epilepsy. And so for my 27th time, I am very much looking forward to not a rumble, but a great conversation about the issues that face the state of Indiana today.
One of the other topics that always comes up, and the cool thing about this show, when we do it each week, we're going to have new things because the State House is an ever-evolving.
And people. New people.
Yeah, you're going to have guests on, which is going to be really great. I think you've got a guest, very exciting, that's going to be very soon for us. One of the issues, though, that always comes up, and there never seems to be much traction on, yet it's a hot-button topic, is Sunday alcohol sales.
Yes.
Will we see anything with that this year?
There's been a bill filed by Senator Phil Boots that is right now in Rules Committee that is chaired by Senator Long. There are times the Rules Committee meets and hears bills, sometimes not. And so alcohol is always something that's discussed in the way of it's being governed, and time will tell. I would predict that we won't have very much legislation dealing with alcohol this year.
I was watching the Senate confirmation hearing for Tillerson yesterday for Secretary of State for Donald Trump, and I was watching these senators ask these questions, and having been a part of Senate confirmation hearings on the state level, you guys are so much nicer than those guys, and you're so much less arrogant. I mean, I'd say that jokingly, but when you come into let's talk about a Senate hearing real quick. You guys really do try to not, most of the time, inflect your opinion into those hearings. You try to gather information.
Oh, absolutely. And I
unlike the U.S. Senate guys.
Well, I can only speak for us because I don't watch a whole lot of that, but our committee hearings are actually to craft bills. And we don't have any oversight over anyone in the administration. And we also, when I present a bill, I presented a bill yesterday about death certificates with drug overdoses. And it was a very constructive conversation, constructive questions of the members of the Senate panel, the committee, the local government affairs committee, and as well as we had some people come in that really were knowledgeable about death certificates. And there's no hide and seek. It's all out there. We asked the questions in the very businesslike tone, and he held the bill. The Chairman Buck held the bill, and we'll come back with a better bill next week or the following week. That is why it's such a privilege to work in the Senate, is because it's a laboratory. It's somewhere where we can work on issues, and if we're not successful, we bring them back this year for the next year.
Senator Merritt, very exciting first episode of 2017. We'll be back again next week, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about, so thank you very much for filling us in.
Happy Martin Luther King Day.
That's right. That's very right around the corner there, coming up on Monday. Hey, don't forget, if you missed any part of today's conversation, obviously, if you're watching the podcast, it's on YouTube. You go back and watch us. Senator Merritt dressed much nicer than I am, as always. But you can watch us on YouTube. We're also available on SoundCloud and iTunes. Just search Central Indiana Today, and you'll find the show labeled there. You can download it right to your smartphone or tablet. Go back and listen any time you want. So for Senator Jim Merritt, I'm Rob Kendall saying have yourself a great weekend.